always a pretty big, like, it's either you really love to read or you just don't want to pick up a book for the rest of your life. Like, there's really no in between, and that really saddens me because I love to read a lot, and I really want to shed some light on like why books are actually really good for your health. So studies have shown that reading is actually good for you, and it reduces stress, enhances your mental stimulation, and it makes you a lot smarter. So the first topic I'm going to talk about is reducing stress, because college students have a lot of stress going through college and doing all these tests and having to do studies. And so yeah, I'll just do. Okay, so reducing stress. Reading actually works better and faster than any other methods to calm frazzled nerves. So psychologists believe this because the human mind has to concentrate on reading and the distraction of being taken into a literary world that eases the tensions in the muscles and the heart. So there was a research performed there was like a group of volunteers at the University of Sussex, and what they did is they took a bunch of volunteers and they put them through a series of tests to get their heart rate moving and to get their stress level really high, and then they put them through a series of what people would think would be really stress relieving, and they kind of compared them to how, like, the stress levels if you were to read a book. So the research showed that listening to music reduced your stress by 61%, having a cup of tea or coffee reduced it by 54%, taking a walk reduced it by 42%, and video games reduced it by 21%, but it left the volunteers with heart rates above their actual starting point. Which I can totally understand that, because I also play video games and I get really worked up when I play video games, so not very really stress relieving. I'm actually really shocked that that was even part of the stress relief process. So reading worked the best. It reduced the stress levels by 68%, which is higher by 7%, which was the next lowest. Subjects only needed to read silently for only 6 minutes to slow the heart rate, and it eased tension in the muscles, and in fact got the stress levels below than what they actually started. So the next one is exercising your brain every day doesn't just reduce stress, but also stimulates your mind to keep it healthy and functioning. So studies have shown that staying mentally stimulated can actually slow the progress or possibly even prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. So keeping your brain active and engaged prevents from losing power. There's a saying that it's just like the muscles in your body. The brain requires exercise to keep it strong and healthy, so the phrase use it or lose it is very prominent here. And yeah. Yes, so when you read a book, you have to remember an assortment of characters through their backgrounds, ambitions, history, as well as the various subplots that weave their way through the story. So not only does it stimulate your mind, but it also improves your memory, because when you read and you go through this like entire world, you have to remember all these different characters. I don't know if you guys have read the Game of Thrones books. Very thick books, a lot of subplots, a lot of like different leading pathways that you all have to remember that all come together. So by reading books with those big plot lines, it actually enhances your memory, and that way you can memorize things further along. Okay, so the next one is more knowledge. So everyone knows that when you read books, you gain a lot more knowledge, you get smarter. But there's multiple ways that you can do that. Obviously, if you read a textbook, you're going to learn the information that you're reading. But you can also learn through, like, without you actually, like subconsciously learn, like you're not wanting to learn, you're just doing it for fun, but you actually end up learning in the long run. So one thing that I learned is in some fictional books, authors will actually research the time era that they are writing their characters in to make it historically accurate. So a personal book that I read, it was based off of, it was like in the medieval time, and it was about the Queen of Scots, Queen Elizabeth, and her reign and how she was forced into a marriage with the King of France, and his name was Francis. And so while I was reading this book, I was actually learning about the historical background of Queen Elizabeth and like that entire political era. And so it actually got me intrigued into that time frame, and I actually researched it myself and found out that everything that was happening in the book, even though it was more dramatic and more romanticized, I guess you could say, it was still fairly accurate in the time era that it was being portrayed. So another thing that you learn is vocabulary is increased a lot when you read. You can learn vocabs subconsciously as well, but just by context clues. So you might not even know that you don't know a word until you're like scanning back over and you're just like, oh, I don't know this, but you understand what it means just because of the sentence and the context around it. Or you could just also look at it and be like, I don't know what this means, I'm gonna look it up. You learned a word. Congratulations. So that's going to be it. So my concluding is books are really important. I love to read, and it has actually helped me cope through a lot of stressful things in my life. I use books a lot to really escape into a literary world where I can be stress-free and I don't have to worry about anything, and it's really great to just leave for 20-30 minutes and then come back and just completely be at ease. So I hope that this presentation maybe got you thinking about reading books or not, and maybe you can try reducing your stress.